Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're heading to a place where glittering myths just crash right into a terrifying, grueling reality. I mean, on one hand, you've got these wild internet legends about an ancient alien library made of solid gold hidden deep underground in South America. But then, on the other hand, you have the actual Cueva de Los Tayos down in the dense Ecuadorian Amazon. And let me tell you, the reality is a pitch-black abyss crawling with venomous creatures, massive drop-offs, and some truly ancient secrets. So we're going to strip away all that Indiana Jones fantasy today and look at what it literally takes to survive a descent into this underworld, relying purely on the accounts of folks who've actually braved the darkness. But before we get into the cave itself, just consider this for a second. Back in 1976, this massive expedition ventured right into the remote, incredibly hostile Shar jungle. And these guys weren't just your run-of-the-mill treasure hunters. Among them was Neil Armstrong. Yeah, the very first man to walk on the moon. So you kind of have to ask yourself, why would an astronaut, a man of science who had literally touched another world, risk his life to plunge into a treacherous cave system rumored to hold crystal sarcophagi and alien tablets? What exactly was he looking for down there in the dark?
Okay, let's dive into this wild lore, because the stories surrounding Tayos have just escalated so much over the decades. It really all kicked off in the 1960s, when Father Crespi, who was a priest living among the local Shuar tribe, was reportedly gifted these mysterious gold artifacts that had, of all things, Mesopotamian-like symbols engraved on them. Then, fast forward to 1969, and explorer Juan Moritz claims he actually went down into Tayos Cave and found a vast library of golden books covered in alien symbols. But, conveniently, he didn't have a camera to prove it. Still, this claim sparked a total global frenzy. It all culminated in 1976 when a Scottish treasure hunter named Stan Hall launched one of the biggest cave expeditions in history, bringing along the Ecuadorian military and, as we mentioned, Neil Armstrong. Today, though, that golden library is still nowhere to be found, and access is pretty much limited to these rare, absolutely grueling descents permitted by the Shuar.
To even survive a descent into this kind of world, modern explorers literally have to shed their civilized instincts. The Shuar people actually revere this cave as the home of giant spirits, which, interestingly enough, sounds a lot like the ancient Denisovan thunder people remembered in other native legends. But practically speaking, surviving down here means you've got to tap into what psychologist Tom Hartman calls primal hunter awareness. You've got to be constantly scanning your environment for threats, acting without a second's hesitation. It's an incredibly high-stimulation, high-risk environment where one tiny misstep can spell disaster. You are definitely not in a comfortable, predictable world anymore. You have to think like an ancient hunter just to stay alive.
And that really brings us to a pretty stark contrast. I mean, the myth talks about this immaculately carved golden metal library, right? Glowing with alien symbols, watched over by crystal sarcophagi. It sounds honestly like a pristine movie set. But the reality? The reality is explorers trudging through ankle-deep bird guano, dodging giant tarantulas with blue limbs, and trying to navigate through this absolute heavy blackness. The cave is definitely not some sterile vault. It's a raw, decaying, living ecosystem that kind of feels like it just wants to swallow you whole. Actually, just getting to the front door is an extreme physical ordeal. First off, you've got to navigate the turbulent, raging rapids of the Amazonian rivers, usually in just a small, open-top boat. After that comes hours of this grueling, muddy uphill trek straight through dense rainforest, sweating through the intense humidity of Shuar territory. So picture this. You're standing at the edge, completely exhausted, completely surrounded by thick jungle, and now you have to trust a single rope to lower yourself 200 feet straight down into a gaping pit of total echoing blackness.
And as you make that terrifying drop, your senses are just completely assaulted. You are not descending into some peaceful silence, not at all. The cave actually gets its name from the tails birds, or oil birds, that roost way up high in the ceilings. They are nocturnal, right, and they navigate entirely by echolocation. Explorers have reported that the constant, echoing shrieks of these birds flying around the pitch-black caverns sound, and this is a direct quote, literally like demons murdering babies. It's just an incredibly eerie, psychologically disorienting welcome to the underworld.
So, when your feet finally touch the cave floor, you realize you've just dropped into a highly hostile, venomous ecosystem where life pretty much revolves entirely around decay. Remember those screaming Tayos birds? Well, their droppings pile up into these massive, thick layers of guano, and that guano feeds enormous, totally transparent cockroaches, where you can actually see their internal organs. And where you have bottom feeders, well, you're going to have predators.
Down there, you're sharing the darkness with giant blue-limbed Goliath tarantulas, deadly poison dart frogs whose venom can seep right through human skin, and these massive whip scorpions that just lurk quietly on the limestone walls.
Because of all this, explorers have to follow some absolutely strict rules for survival. Rule number 1, never ever place your hand on a rock or sit down without shining your flashlight on it first. I mean it, a venomous scorpion or a giant purple centipede could be resting just inches away. And keep in mind, a medical evacuation from deep inside this maze, it's basically impossible. You are entirely on your own. So, you've got to purify the tiny trickles of water falling from the ceiling, you have to move swiftly when nature calls, and you must absolutely never wander off alone into that endless labyrinth of identical tunnels.
Now, speaking of answering nature's call, we really have to talk about the infamous guano toilet. To protect the delicate environment of the cave, explorers use a makeshift wooden block placed directly over a huge pile of guano. And that pile is already teeming with predatory, scavenging insects just waiting to naturally break down the waste. So just picture trying to go to the bathroom while giant venomous centipedes are scuttling by, huge transparent cockroaches are pulsing right beneath you, and a resident scorpion is just chilling right next to the toilet seat. It is truly an adventure in extreme vigilance. Honestly, it's arguably the most terrifying bathroom break on planet Earth.
But if you can somehow manage to push past the terror and the insects, you eventually venture deeper into these massive limestone caverns. And this is where things get really weird. You find flat ceilings meeting walls at absolutely perfect right angles. It looks so precise, so architectural, that it's incredibly easy to see exactly why people thought this place was artificially carved by ancient machines. And it's down in these deeper, majestic halls that modern explorers can actually find the exact stalagmite where Neil Armstrong posed for a photo in 1976, letting them literally stand in the footsteps of the famous moonwalker.
What's truly fascinating, though, is the profound impact this place had on him. Even though they didn't find any alien libraries or golden books, Armstrong later remarked that his time deep inside the Tayos cave rivaled his experience of walking on the moon. Let that sink in. The sheer alien scale of the natural architecture, the complete and crushing isolation from the surface world, it deeply, deeply affected a man who had already seen the ultimate literal frontier of space. For modern expeditions, the climax often happens in a massive, tiered limestone amphitheater deep within the system. Down here, explorers do something completely terrifying. They turn off all their flashlights. The darkness is absolute. It literally swallows you. And away from those shrieking birds at the entrance, the silence down in this cavern is so heavy and so profound, it almost feels like it has a sound of its own. It's a total sensory deprivation experience that forces you to just quietly confront the immense, crushing weight of the earth resting right above your head.
And this brilliantly illustrates how even in that suffocating darkness, the cave still manages to surprise you. While sitting in that absolute pitch black, people have reported seeing these faint, floating blue orbs of light just drifting silently across the room. On top of that, inside a tarantula hole of all places, one explorer recently found a polished, quartz-like stone that glowed bright blue in the dark. Now, the floating orbs are most likely some sort of undiscovered bioluminescent insect, but these strange, glowing phenomena keep the magical, otherworldly aura of Tayos Cave very much alive.
So, what does this all mean? Well, the crucial point is this. We never actually found Juan Moritz's golden library. Maybe it never existed. Maybe it was just a tall tale spun by a wealthy eccentric. Or maybe it's still hidden somewhere in those hundreds of miles of uncharted, deadly tunnels. But as you've seen in this explainer today, maybe we've been asking the wrong question the entire time. When you look at the towering natural cathedrals, the bizarre glowing phenomena, and this terrifying primal ecosystem, does a metallic library even really matter? Or is the brutal, completely untouched reality of Cueva de Los Tayos actually the ultimate ancient treasure? We'll leave that for you to decide.